This week's episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! Is sponsored by Found Penny Studio. Found Penny Studio is exclusively fulfilling our Patreon Tier 3 merchandise perk by doing what they do best, creating to celebrate everyday moments like your favorite TV series. Check out Found Penny Studio's creations at foundpennystudio.com and find Couch Potatoes Unite on Patreon at www.patreon.com/couchpotatoesunite.
You say you want to watch a drama. You say you want to watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama. Or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler. So you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch Potatoes Unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch Potatoes Unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because it's like going back to the past to discover a more improved future version of ourselves. Wait, what? Did that make sense? You tell us, listener. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon Music to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Supernatural, Orange is the New Black, Gotham, the Marvel shows on Netflix, Stranger Things, iZombie, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, The Good Place, The Crown, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, and Mr. Robot. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Altered Carbon, Doctor Who, Schitt's Creek, Westworld, Fuller House, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Will and Grace, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We'll be launching new panels covering The Orville, Big Little Lies, The Good Doctor, Call the Midwife, and The Animaniacs. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll thank the Golden Girls for being friends, and we'll cry Bazinga for Big Bang Theory. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these semi-quarantine times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to our website, YouTube channel, Apple iTunes channel, Stitcher Radio channel, Google Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. You can find us everywhere. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback. We don't even mind sedition, as long as you keep it peaceful. How's that for a loaded statement? Today we're around the water cooler and continuing our catch-up series centered on a multi-season historical drama based upon a series of novels of the same name by Diana Gabaldon. The show is Outlander, and this is the third of a 5-part series in which CPU catches up on this series, which airs its primary run on Premium Network Stars. In this episode, part 3 of this series, we're discussing Season 3, which aired on Stars from September 10th, 2017 to December 10th, 2017, with a total of 13 episodes. We'll discuss each subsequent available season and each new episode of our catch-up series. Developed by Ronald D. Moore, Outlander stars Katrina Balfe as Claire Randall, a married former World War II nurse who in 1945 finds herself transported back to Scotland in 1743. There she encounters the dashing Highland warrior Jamie Fraser, played by Sam Heughan, and becomes embroiled in the Jacobite risings. In Season 3, Jamie, spoiler, kills Black Jack Randall, played by Tobias Menzies, at Culloden and is gravely injured but spared execution. At Ardsmuir Prison, he befriends the governor, Lord John Grey, played by David Barry, who later paroles him to work at an English estate. There, Jamie is manipulated into a sexual liaison and fathers an illegitimate son, William. Jamie returns to Scotland and becomes a printer. Simultaneously, in 1948, Claire enrolls in medical school in Boston. Frank, also played by Menzies, and spoiler, is killed in a car accident while Brianna, played by Sophie Skelton, is in college. With the help of Roger Wakefield, played by Richard Rankin, Claire finds clues to Jamie's fate after Culloden and decides to attempt to return to the 18th century and to him. Outlander was a show requested by a few like-minded Sassenachs and some of our resident couch potatoes, namely panelists Kristen, Samantha, Lori, Karen, and Anna Laura, all of whom have reconvened around the water cooler today, ready to take on Season 3 of this wild romantic tale of a woman who lives her life in 2 different time periods, though her heart is ever tied to the past. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have watched all episodes of this series through Season 3 and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched Outlander and plan to do so at some point, listen at your own risk as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel. How are you?
Woohoo!
Hey.
Are you ready to resume our catch-up series by talking Season 3?
Absolutely.
Let's do this thing.
All right. Well, we can't get started without going over the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do. I need to take your temperature following the 3rd season. And of course, I've yet again tweaked this question because some characters left and some characters came back and some characters sadly passed away. And so I had to shuffle the whole deck. And now you get to tell me how you felt about Season 3 along this character question scale after you watched it. Are you ready, panel?
Yes.
All right. All right. So how do you feel about Season 3 along this version of Outlander's character question? Do you love this show, the fantasy aspects, the romance, and the appreciation and reverence for Scotland, plus the elements of action and adventure? All of it is just so exciting, even thrilling, and nothing like you've experienced before. How could something feel so timely to the future when so much of it is set in the past? You could watch this for days, you can. Plus, the leading lady isn't hard on the eyes, like Jamie, Mackenzie, Fraser. You're of 2 minds about this show. The past sweeps you off your feet unexpectedly, while the future brings with it aspects of intrigue as a mystical looking glass into the past. It's as if you're living 2 lives while watching this show, an experience that is full of surprises, but also offers the occasional storytelling hiccups. Still, you will persevere as you do for your love of one Jamie Fraser, like Claire Fraser. Did you start watching in earnest near the end of Season 2 and were enticed by the potential of learning the explanation for how Claire gets involved in all of this to begin with and how she comes to live 2 lives, including having a child with a father who lived 200 years in the past, like Roger Wakefield and Brianna Randall? Did you start watching this show beginning with Season 3, possibly because you were too young to appreciate the first 2 seasons and are most enticed by the adventure, the sex, and perhaps, on the more innocent side, by the sense of family and the comfort that family provides, as any young adult just starting their life in the world might be, like young Ian Fraser Murray, the adult version of Claudel Fergus Fraser, and Marsali McKinney Fraser. Though you were convinced to watch this show via nefarious or tricky means, believing it was something it wasn't, namely something that would most appeal to women, you find that it is so much more interesting and complex than for what you initially gave it credit. You're particularly taken in by Jamie Fraser's dashing good looks and seriousness of purpose, like Lord John Grey. Did your interest in the show begin to wane after watching the 3rd season? No matter how much you love the main characters and how much like family they are to you, you're starting to feel trapped by the pull of the show when you don't exactly love the storytelling direction as much as you used to love it. It almost feels as if you're in prison, like Murtaugh Fraser. There are parts you like and parts you don't, but your family watches it, so you sit down to watch with them and become involved in spite of yourself because they're so involved and invested in the story, like Janet or Jenny Fraser Murray and Ian Murray, the older one, of course. Are you obsessed with this show? But the obsession is unhealthy because you dream of falling in love with Jamie Fraser, which can only be a product of your imagination, especially since he would never love you back as long as Claire is around. town, like Larry Mackenzie McKimmy Fraser. You watched beginning with season 2 because you were on a mission from God. Unfortunately, you got lost pretty quickly and felt defeated too fast to stay invested beyond that, and stopped watching soon after season 3 started, like Prince Charles Edward Stuart. Did you enjoy the show quite a bit at first, and though you lost interest with all of the superficial exploration of pagan ritual and medieval justice, the season 2 premiere and Claire's return to the present, which included a future that was your past, rekindled your interest anew, so you quickly caught up with season 2 in order to find out what happens in season 3, as you hoped for an answer to the time travel element of the story and how Claire and Gellis specifically came to move through the stones, and in such different ways, like Gellis Duncan, aka Gillian Edgars. Do you check in on the show? Only from time to time, especially when you know the main characters, who you find pleasant enough, will spend some length of time in Scotland. Otherwise, you only engage in the show's entertainment services when you have the time or the inclination, though it does feel like a happy reunion when you do, like Ned Gowan. Did you watch it mainly because someone else in your household watched it or watches it? You don't really care for it all that much. You basically are just along for the ride because it's on the house, or houseboat, if you have one, like Captain Rains. Now, they're not going to answer this one, but I again mentioned the deaths, so I'm just going to put this out here for your consideration. Did you stop watching it because after the Battle of Culloden, the focus of the show no longer centered squarely on Scotland's quest for independence from the British Crown? It was this facet and the story surrounding the clans that kept you most interested, or because, spoiler, you died, like Dougal Mackenzie, Angus Moore, and Rupert Mackenzie? Or did you stop watching because the love triangle of past and future suitor evaporated in the 3rd season, and that was the element that intrigued you most? Or the villainy shifted somewhat away from the English, particularly the dark and interesting Blackjack, when it was Scotland's futile attempt to vie for independence that intrigued you most? Or because, spoiler, you died, like Frank Randall and Captain Jonathan Blackjack Randall. Who would like to start?
This is Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
So I'm pretty sure that last season I was a Jamie/Claire, if memory serves, and I think that's what I continue to be, despite some bumps in the road. I'm still very passionate.
Okay. Welcome back, Samantha.
I would also say that I'm still a pretty good combination of Jamie and Claire.
What is your name?
Season is where... What?
What is your name?
My name is Anna Laura. Hello.
Hi, Anna Laura. Hello.
Hey. I would still say that I'm a pretty good combination of Jamie and Claire for this season. I do still really like the show. There are some things that I'm like, about, but I would also throw in a sprinkling of young Ian, Fergus, and Marsley, because I love watching their family grow, and I love watching Jamie and Claire be parents / foster parents / adopted parents and all those aspects, and watch the show grow with their family.
All right. Welcome back, Anna Laura.
This is Karen.
Hi, Karen.
I would say I am still very firmly in the Jamie Fraser camp. This season is based on one of my favorite books in the series, and I really feel that they did an amazing job portraying it, and I love all the interactions of all the characters. So, yeah, I'm still in the Jamie camp.
All right. Welcome back, Karen.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi. I don't remember what I was last time, but I know I was near the top of the list. So this time
you
I'm
were
going to go with...
I think you were the first two, because you're a multiple.
I usually choose more than one.
You do.
So I'm still going to be Jamie and Claire for all the obvious reasons. I still love this show, even 3 seasons in. But just for fun, I'm also going to add Leary in, because I am very obsessed with this show. I watched, again, season 3 went by in a blink. We watched it, my husband and I watched it in like a matter of days, because he's just as obsessed now as I am. So Jamie, Claire, and Leary, just for fun.
Okay. Welcome back, Kristen.
Lori.
Hi, Lori.
So I was mostly in the Jamie camp with a little bit of Claire, and I'm still there, but add a little bit of John Gray in there. Because he's one of my favorite characters.
And it doesn't have anything to do with Jamie Fraser's dashing good looks and seriousness of purpose.
Well, there's always that.
All right. Welcome back, Lori. And of course, my name is Kylie. I participate and moderate on this panel, as is often the case. I believe last time I was a combination of Jamie and Claire. I've been Claire the whole time, but added Jamie in season 2. I think I'm going to stay there. I'm going to add to my growing list of characters, which is usually, I don't usually like to add so many, but this time I'm going to. I'm going to add Brianna and Roger. Even though I didn't start near the end of season 2, I did add the part about how they came to live 2 lives and how they have the child. I'm still very interested in the mystical elements of the show. I felt like we were driving towards something for a while in this season. It didn't quite resolve to my satisfaction, so now I need to keep going. But I also did really enjoy season 3. It was different from the first 2 seasons again, which I think I appreciate how they have found different locales and different adventures to go on. In some aspects, it's a little repetitive, though, too, which we're going to talk about. So we have a lot to say, I think. We have had for our first 2 catch-up episodes in this series. I imagine we will have for season 3. Let's head right on into the discussion. Tell me, what did you think of this season? Half of which, well, let me break this out. This is in thirds. The first third was Jamie and Claire separated by 200 years, where Jamie was trying to he survived the Battle of Culloden and was trying to survive continually now that the English were asserting a more heavy hand in their rule over Scotland and quelling those rebels from the Battle of Culloden. That's one piece. While Claire was in the 40s and trying to make a life with Frank. I'm just going to throw in poor Frank. Poor Frank! I have poor Frank feelings.
I have no sympathy. Maybe not no sympathy, but not much.
All right.
I'm right there with you, Anna Laura.
Okay, 1 second. Hold it. Bring it in. So that's the first third. Then, as I've alluded to multiple times, Frank passes away very quickly after this third, and Claire says, "Darn it, I'm going back," because they figure out that Jamie survived the Battle of Culloden. So she makes her way back to Craignadoon and goes back in time. Apparently time flows the same way in the present and the past. We'll have to talk about that. But she goes back and reunites with Jamie with all the passion that you could possibly imagine. And then after they come back to Lallybroch for a second, and he married her. What the heck was that? He married Larry, but then realized couldn't stay married because his actual first wife was alive, so they had to find a way to pay her off. They were going to use the Mackenzie treasure to do it, and in the process of finding that treasure, young Ian, who was a baby in season 2 and is now young Ian, gets kidnapped by pirates and taken to the Caribbean, where they also follow. And that's the last third of the season. So it's a jam-packed season 3. Tell me, ladies, what did you think?
Well, when you lay it out like that, I feel like I just experienced so much more.
It was so short.
Well, it starts out so sad, but those episodes where they're apart, and I understand why they keep them apart for so long, because it's like 20 years, and you have to kind of feel the 20 years. But it's just so sad, and they're both having miserable lives. Ugh. But I also don't have much sympathy for Frank. A little bit, he didn't have to be a dad, but he chose it, so you're stuck, fella.
Amen. I feel like with Frank, I start out being like, okay, he's trying, participation trophy, but then we kind of end up leaning into the kind of stereotypical, I feel, 1950s
Outlander.
disinterested, a little misogynistic, because he's very much focused on his own career and all that stuff, which is fine, but at the same time kind of ignoring Claire's needs and what she's going through, and the fact that she's having to readjust to life in a completely different century. And now that they've moved to Boston, in a completely different country and social setting, she's not going to have any friends there yet. She's not going to have that same support system. And then when she does go, and decides to take classes to become a doctor, which, let's go, girl, get your degree. And she starts to find something again where she's really excited about it, and she feels like she has a purpose and a drive, and starting to make friends there too. He's not supportive, and he's kind of a dick about it.
Correct. But it does give us the chance to enter Joe Abernathy, who's one of my favorite characters this season.
We do love Joe.
Love
His
Joe.
whole aura, and how he calls her Lady Jane, and just how they're best buds because they're both, fish out of water for the setting. But they're so smart and sharp. Love it.
Yes, we do love Joe.
And she can throw in Frank's face about how he has his whole family history wrong.
That's true. That is a little bit hilarious to me, where he's like, oh, I've done all this research. I know so much about my family. And especially like in season 1, they're talking about like, oh, Blackjack was like this great British officer. Look at all these things he did. And then she comes back and he's like, hey, so he was sort of evil. Sorry to, rip the rose-tinted glasses for your family tree off. Yeah, sorry, bud.
So, I have reactions. I'll tell you why I said poor Frank. It's not because I sympathize with... Let me put it to you this way. There is a very key scene, I think it's in episode 2, where she basically sits him down and says, look, if you're unhappy, let's get a divorce. Let's just get a divorce. And then he gives this sing-song cry about how his friend didn't get to see their child when he got a divorce. I don't know how accurate that is to 1950s history. My sense of this was that when people got divorced in the 50s, it was much more frowny-faced on the woman in the relationship than the man. But listener, if you were alive at that time and know people who got divorced, please let us know. I felt that was kind of a forced and inorganic reason for him to want to stay after they set him up to be so frustrated with the fact that she had such passionate yearnings for Jamie. When I say poor Frank, it's because they very ignominiously killed him off in a car accident. Off screen.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, they do kind of just that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And killing off Blackjack in the Battle of Culloden make total sense. It was all it was the end of his arc. That all made sense.
That was very satisfying.
That was very satisfying. It made for a very roundabout, very closed off, not roundabout, circular story for Blackjack. Frank, not so much.
Yeah, it feels like it kind of does get cut off.
If you've
It
read
is very sudden.
Go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say, if you've read the books, there is a lot more that happens leading up to his being in the car accident. He and Claire have a giant fight because he basically tells Claire that he wants a divorce. He's taking Brianna to England without her. He doesn't want her around. He thinks she's a bad influence, and he's basically come to Claire to say, look, I'm leaving, I'm taking Brianna with me, I'm going to England, you're staying here. And they have a big knockdown, drag-out fight. It's sleeting outside, it's winter, the weather is nasty. He gets angry, he runs out the door, grabs the keys, runs out the door, gets in the car. The next thing she knows is she gets a phone call, and he's been in an accident, and she gets called to the hospital. They tried to tidy it up and make it work within the context of the series and the episode, but yeah, it feels rather sudden and inexplicable in the context of the series. But when you know the backstory in the book, you expect it.
Okay. Yeah, because they do touch on, there is a fight prior to him leaving. He doesn't present it, he does present, I want a divorce now, I'm done, I'm ready to marry this other woman. But he doesn't present taking Brianna to England as an ultimatum. He says, I'm going to ask her to come with me, and I expect her to say yes, but in the meantime, we're done. peace out. And she's basically saying F you, and she's my daughter, and yeah, all that stuff.
But really, the whole I'm gonna take, even if it's not, because I've also read the books at this point too, even though it's not as indicative in the show of like, I'm definitely taking her, like the sense that you get is that Brianna and her mom don't jive. Like, she's a daddy's girl, so she's most definitely going. And it just feels like a really jerk move to like take her all the way across the ocean. That's where he lost my sympathy again.
Yeah. In the books, because in the TV show she's like 20 at this point. In the books, she's also like 20 years old. So she's like an adult both times. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because I have not read the books at this point. I only ever read the first book. And yeah, I mean, that is an important distinction between I'm absolutely taking her with me, but then in the show, I feel like that's almost worse, saying that if given the choice, Brianna would go with him. And especially considering Brianna's true parentage and the history of their family, like, yeah, that's a punch to the gut to Claire for sure.
That being said, once he's gone, all I really wanted upon her decision to go back in time was to take Brianna with her.
I know. I was like, why are you leaving your daughter? Because that'll be so sad. Like, you guys just got close again.
Right?
And now you're like, hey, Mom. I'm like, I'm going back to a different century. We may never see each other again.
Right?
Like, oh.
You just ironed out that your mom's not insane. Wouldn't you want to go back with her and see what all the fuss was about?
Wouldn't you want to go back in time and meet your real dad?
Right. I mean, maybe there's something in the future, I don't know. But that's all I kept thinking about. Like, Brianna, you don't want to meet your biological father? He's supposed to be very handsome and very strapping and admirable and stuff.
Information.
Cool dude.
Soak it in first.
Wait.
Time.
What did you say,
Karen? To process. She needs therapy when it's she needs it in a century where therapy is actually a thing.
Oh.
No, I'm not a fan of Brianna. Not until later.
Oh, you know what?
I think she's a spoiled little brat.
Well, yeah, they present her now, yes.
I half agree with you.
But
half agree with you, Lori, because especially the first time that I watched through the series, I was like, wow, I really don't like her. And part of it, too, was, I guess, Sophie Felton's acting. It felt a little wooden to me. But Brianna definitely grew on me as I continued to watch the series past season 3. And I think she kind of settled into the role and got more comfortable in it. So, yeah, I feel that.
I would agree she's a wooden actress. If she's a spoiled brat, it's Claire and Frank's fault.
Frank. More Frank than her because she is a spoiled, a daddy's girl.
But
until she realizes that's not daddy.
Headstrong like her mom, which they established pretty quickly into this season. She says, I finally figured out it's not dad that I'm like, it's you that I'm like. And I think that's a very important realization for her to draw upon. So,
rewatching this season, I haven't rewatched this season all the way through since I initially watched it. This isn't, especially the first half of the season, isn't my go-to to rewatch. But rewatching it, I was kind of reminded of my own dynamic with my own parents growing up. Not only the fact that my parents did get divorced, but that growing up, my mom and I butted heads a lot because we're both very stubborn, both very set in our ways, both very strong-willed women. And my dad and I saw eye to eye a little more easily. But then as I grew older, my mom and I kind of got to a better understanding of each other. And I think Brianna and Claire get that too. So yeah, I see a lot of myself and my mom and our relationship in Brianna and Claire. And also my mom and Claire have pretty much the same hair color and texture, which weirds me out every time. I showed my mom a picture. My mom does not watch the show, but I showed my mom a picture of Claire, especially slightly older Claire from the later seasons where she's got some gray streaks through. That's kind of what my mom's hair looks like right now.
One of my favorite moments was between Claire and Brianna when Claire is preparing to go back, where Brianna essentially gives her blessing. of, I've had you for the past 20 years, go, but he needs you now. I'm giving you back to him. And I just thought that was extremely sweet. And, that's when Brianna really started to grow on me, when she gave her mom her blessing.
Yeah, I never thought she was a spoiled brat. In the 5 episodes that we really spend with Brianna, you're basically watching her journey from, she's smaller when she's littler, she's doted on by her father, but then she finds out all of these truths, which she doesn't even take as truth to begin with. She thinks it sounds crazy. And then when she finally realizes it's the truth, she has to process it herself. I mean, I don't know what I would do with the knowledge that my real father was from 200 years in the past, is not alive anymore, that I share his red hair, and that the man that I knew as my father, who has always doted on me, is not actually my real father. I think that's a lot of information, which goes back to her woodenness. I wish there was more reaction and emotion than what this actress, I think, was capable of. But as far as the character is concerned, I didn't read spoiled brat on her at all.
I think part of the woodenness, too, might be the accent. When I read that Sophie's girlfriend is actually British, she's doing an American accent for this, I was like, maybe she's putting more energy into the accent than the performance.
Our
but like I said,
Spencer,
I do think she settled into the role in later seasons, and she's still maybe not my absolute favorite, but she does grow on me. So about the spoiled brat thing, it does occur to me that she's an only child, and as an only child, I will say I have my moments and continue to do so.
Same, Anna. Same.
When you're the only kid, I mean, and you see in these scenes where like she's the only kid in the room, and like everybody else is all her parents' coworkers, who of course are doctors and history professors. Like, when you're a kid and you're an only child, you're the only kid that your parents have to focus on and love and give things to. And when you're constantly surrounded by adults, like, that'll happen.
Our panelist, Spencer, who would not be on such a show as this, far out of his realm of comfort, but he has made that observation about British actors trying to do American accents sometimes distracts from their overall performance, as they're so focused on flattening out that accent for Americanization. So that makes perfect sense to me. And benefit of the doubt, real nice. What else about season 3? There's so much, All
right, I'm going to say it because it's bothered me when they aged the 2 characters. They did not age them appropriately. They still look, young, especially Jamie. He does not look like a 40-something. And the few streaks of gray, to me, and I know why they can't, obviously, because the actors are of certain ages, but that's one thing that I do find distracting, just like the red hair issue on both Brianna and Jamie.
I'm so glad they didn't just, pile on a bunch of old age makeup, though, because then where it looks...
Yeah.
So if I had to pick, I would pick the looking a little too young.
Yeah, I think
or like that weird CGI that's becoming the rage to either de-age or age actors. Yeah. Now, that freaks me out so much. I hate it. Not even thinking about the scary implications that it has, just in terms of using people's faces and the kind of sociological implications of that kind of technology, but just the way it looks. It looks real weird to me. And I mean, they don't really look like they're in their 50s. I mean, Sam Heughan and Katrina Balfe I believe they both turned 40 this year. So, they're not, in their 20s. They're super duper young. But they're not also not yet to the age of the characters that they're playing. So you can kind of tell that they are in the middle.
Yeah, there was an interview that I read with, I think, the hair and makeup designer or the lead of the team, and they said, we really can't age them up. That they tried some makeup tests with, even just drawing in some darker lines and trying some old age makeup, and they said nothing looked right on camera. It's really hard to take 2 very beautiful people who are, late 30s, early 40s, and trying to age them up even another decade when they're not quite ready for it. Yeah, I guess they both have beautiful skin and they're just beautiful, beautiful people. And they're we can't. So that's why we did a couple streaks of gray in the wigs, and that's all we can do. I think there was also kind of a throwaway joke that some of the audience may not appreciate watching two aged up people trying to have sex. Rub them the wrong way if like Claire's all wrinkly and gross on camera, so Jamie losing some of his six-pack. So they said, we kind of had to take that in consideration too. It's like, what is the audience actually going to want to watch when we have those scenes? So
now, come on, that could have been equal opportunity for people. Everybody has the relations. It's not restricted to just before middle age, I guess, is what we're calling this.
I know. I thought that it was just a kind of funny moment that the person, I really wish I could remember the interview. If I find it, I'll send it to you, Kylie, to post. Okay. But it was just kind of a funny, like little, like almost like a throwaway joke. Like and no one wants to see this. But
the only thing that bothered me was the wig she had in the American episodes in Boston. That was so obviously a wig, and it was really, really like... Yeah, it looked like she had a whole can of Aquanet on her head. Much sooner than that would have been the case.
For you ladies. They wore their hair. Yeah. And as the single panelist who is old enough to remember when they walked on the road. Yeah, that was a very popular, very stylish hairstyle. And it required grape juice cans or orange juice cans as rollers and a lot of Aquanet, yes.
Okay. I'm just saying it was very obviously a wig, and that was the part that I was distracted by, not the hairstyle itself. Yeah. But it didn't bother me, the makeup part didn't bother me. There was enough of a hint on each of them that...
You just go with it.
You have to. You kind of have to.
And I do, but for people not realizing at times 20 years has passed, it's like he would still be probably very physically fit as an outdoorsman. But you got the whole, she lives in the here and now, or in the 50s and 60s, and she won't age as harsh as he would have. But let's get to one of my favorite scenes, is Culloden.
Well, let's get to it. What do you want to say?
So,
fantastic way to open the season, number one.
Especially with that kind of mic drop moment at the end of season 2 where she's like, I have to go back. And they're at Craignadoon. And you think that that's where season 3 is going to start, with her going back. But they're like, ha ha ha, we're going to make you wait. But then they do bring in something else that's really, really awesome and really cool to start off the season with.
So, who do you really think killed Jack?
Oh,
because there is no scene where you see his death. You just see his head in the lap.
You're right. I don't know. I guess I didn't think about it too critically at the time because Jamie's lying in a field of death and devastation, and maybe I just figured at the time Blackjack, he got the wrong end of a sword somehow and landed in the mud on top of him. It must be Jamie, though, because they're right next to each other.
Yeah, I think so. Like, they both... But I also think that Jamie thought, like, that was almost like his dying breath, and, like, I'm gonna kill him with my dying breath and then be good. And then when he realizes he's still alive and very much does not want to still be alive. And it's like those first couple episodes, like no matter what he does, he can't kick the bucket. Getting saved.
Yeah, I really think that they injured each other. I think Jamie did deal Blackjack that final blow that ultimately killed him. But then we know that Jamie is injured as well. And I think that probably also came from Blackjack. But Jamie, just like Samantha said, he just couldn't kick the bucket, and he gets reprieved, and then he gets out of prison, and he has so many things in his favor in this first part of the season.
They do show a sequence where they're fighting each other, but it does cut away from that too. So I guess my mind just made the leap that it was probably something mutual in that respect.
Yeah, I kind of made that assumption as well.
In the books, they never actually say. He doesn't remember the battle. Jamie, when he's asked about it later, he doesn't remember the battle. He just knows that he woke up in the battlefield and Blackjack was dead on his chest. So they hint at it, but there is no answer in the books. So it's up for conjecture.
Forever or just for now?
Forever. It's
so far.
I always thought that Jamie didn't kill him, that his uncle killed him. And that was a parting, I'm sorry.
Dougal, you mean?
Yep.
Dougal's already dead.
Yeah, Dougal's already dead at that point.
Yeah, he is. He dies.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay.
he eavesdrops and he hears Claire and Jamie saying, like, we're going to kill Bonnie Prince Charlie. And he's like, what the heck, you guys? And then
That's
they're
right.
like, oh, stab.
Yeah, you're right. I missed
Yeah,
that piece.
as a non-book reader, that moment was shocking. That Jamie, spoiler, killed Dougal.
Oh, yeah, same.
Yeah.
That was in season 2.
In the book, it plays a little
Yeah.
different because Dougal attacks Claire and is choking Claire. And Jamie kills Dougal in defense of Claire. But in the show, it was kind of all right there, and Jamie just went after him. So it was a little different.
I used the wrong name. Murtaugh. Sorry. I believe it was Murtaugh.
Oh.
That's who I believe it was.
The
That's his
Godfather.
godfather.
The Godfather. Yeah.
Godfather.
I love Murtaugh so much.
Oh, my gosh.
That's actually an interesting theory, because the first time you see Murtaugh this season, he's just in the prison. You don't even see him in the little cabin where some of the refugees have gone to hide and where the British find them and start executing them. The first time you see Murtaugh is in Ardmere prison. So
That's where it
interesting.
starts to diverge from the books.
Oh.
That's one of those. Murtaugh is a fan favorite.
He's one of my favorites. I really like
They
him.
wrote him back into the show
Yes.
because he's a fan favorite.
Oh.
He
Yeah, I was
does
gonna...
take it out of Culloden in the books.
Oh. Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
And that's where I get the whole,
Yeah.
I don't think Jamie killed him.
I think Murtaugh finished him off, but yeah.
I
You
like
don't get
this.
that in the show, so
Maybe they'll revisit it one day.
It is beautifully shot. The
Yeah.
cinematography for Culloden, I think, is very well done. It was a slaughter. There was no doubt that they marched to their deaths. And then the fallout of after, where they systematically killed the men. I mean, it was 100% eradication in the lowlands, definitely in the lowlands to middle highlands. The British didn't march all the way to the top, though. There were survivors, and that's where you get the whole tie-in, where the U.S., well, it wasn't the U.S., but the colonies was a penal colony, and that's where they shipped them all off.
yep.
Fascinating. I mean, I knew that about Culloden, but I'm more meditating on the Murtaugh killing Blackjack theory.
That's when I read the books, that's how I always felt that Jamie, it was a gift. Because to be right there so perfectly, yeah, I don't think so.
Well, I hope they revisit it. He doesn't talk much about Culloden in the series, though. He really is just haunted and trying to, I mean, he plays the Red Jamie / McDough / whatever alias he's going by in the moment, just trying to elude capture and or permanent prison time, as it were, but for the benefaction of Lord John Grey, who we can talk about. So when we mentioned, there was a mention of a character that everybody loved last time. Is it John Grey?
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
He is. I enjoy him quite a lot. He has lots of shades and nuances, and he seems very good of spirit and generous.
And the gentleman who plays him is just spot on. I mean, just wait till later seasons. No spoilers, but I mean, his character, I just love it. I love it so much. He's so good. He's a wonderful actor.
He really has taken the spirit of Lord John and embraced it. It really is. He does a very nice job.
I enjoy
And should
it.
you mention that he basically leads 2 lives? Is that too much of a spoiler about...
We're spoiling now. We can spoil. That's in season 3.
Okay, he has 2
That's
distinctive lives. His personal spy life, and then what everybody thinks he really is. And they're polar opposites, really. And I'll say it. In his married life, he's a heterosexual male, but really, he's gay.
And quite taken with Jamie. That comes through very,
Very.
clearly.
But not the creepy Jack.
No.
He's not.
No, he's not predatory.
No. He sincerely, I think, has sincere, genuine feelings of love and admiration for him.
And he respects Jamie's boundaries. Like, he knows that Jamie is not interested in turn, but he doesn't try to force that relation, especially considering that for the first half of the season, whether they're at Arnsmuir or Hellwater, he's in a position of power over Jamie, and if he wanted to abuse that, he could have, but he doesn't. He's not an icky predator.
Well, and at this point, Jamie would go all out and beg for death. I mean, he would try to kill him straight out and fine, hang me. I got nothing until something else happens.
The White Lady.
Well, I'm thinking of the kid.
Yeah, Willie.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Oh, yeah.
Willie, and
Even
before that it was the White Lady.
Well,
and he escaped from prison to try to find the White Lady because he thought it meant Claire.
Which
but-
we'll get to who it really meant, because I know who it really. That was not necessarily a shock, but some of the things that they seeded for that story were pretty fun. But that's the part I wanted to talk about with Lord John was, yes, even though he had these feelings and he respected Jamie's boundaries, I think Jamie has a genuine affection in return for him because of that, and it's a true friendship. And then on top of that, he does, Jamie is roped into a sexual liaison where the power construct in this moment actually happens to be possessed by a woman who basically says, you're my servant and I can make you do whatever I want. But what she's really looking for, she's betrothed to marry a rich nobleman who would be her, she's a virgin, as any good virtuous woman at that time would be marrying as a virgin, and doesn't want to, blow her first time on this older guy, so she basically orders Jamie into the sack to teach her the ropes. And that scene starts off kind of icky, but then, it evolves into something that actually becomes kind of sweet. And you can really see he's just so kind. He's kind with everybody, which I think is sort of one of the tragedies of his character, is how misused he is by so many people when he actually is very kind.
Yeah. Does anyone know for sure if when they were casting for Geneva, they purposely cast a young actress who kind of looks like Katrina Baus, because she looks like Claire.
I thought so, too.
She looks like that actress, Hannah James. It was on one of my other favorite shows, Mercy Street on PBS, and then actually the actress who plays her sister was on Sexification. So I'm like, oh, look, all these familiar faces. But I remember the first time I was watching, I was like, wow, she looks like she could be like Claire's younger sister, because they look a lot alike. And I have the feeling that was a factor for Jamie as well.
That's a good point. I thought that too, that she looked a lot like Claire, and had, aside from being a complete brat, that was a spoiled brat. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Very headstrong, though, too, like Claire. So I thought that they were taking it to a place for a moment. I didn't expect her to die in childbirth. But then, of course, we find out that this baby is not with her older nobleman husband. It's Jamie's child, and he's named William. And that, I think, is the part that makes me love John Grey the most, is that not only does he marry the younger sister of the woman that we're speaking of, but in so doing, Jamie asks him to care for Willie when he decides to go, and Lord John is like, oh, but by the way, I'm marrying the sister. Yes, I know I'm one way, but nobody else knows that, and I'll be right there to care for your son. And Jamie's like, dope. You're awesome.
I was wondering about that, because I don't know if it's ever really explicitly stated. I wonder if Lord John is bisexual as opposed to gay, because he talks about being he doesn't really talk about it in terms of interest in women. I guess he never explicitly states like, oh, I also really like women. He's more just like, yeah, I do that too. So I have wondered if maybe instead of being gay, but kind of performing heterosexuality
disagree
because
with
of
your
the
wonderment.
culture.
Yeah, I tend to think of it more of he recognizes the time that he's in and the role he has to play to get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, exactly.
Where I'm at, too.
In the books, he makes no bones about it. He is 100% a homosexual man, but because the mores of the times are such, he has no problems. He's been honestly very fond of Isabel. Doesn't say any. He says so. We grew up together. We've been great friends. And I have tried, and I can adequately service her. Yep. He feels confident in his ability to fake it.
Yeah, he even says I'm able to perform my husbandly duties at one point too. So
and
what happened in that one episode?
The trade-off of, okay, great, you're going to care for my son. Like, if you want my body, you can have it. But there's such affection between the two of them that he's like, no. Like, I would never do that because it makes you uncomfortable. So just that level of respect between them and friendship.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the book, because in the book, Lord John literally laughs so hard he sits down in the field. He literally laughs his ass off. And Jamie's like, why are you laughing at me? And Jamie's all upset. And John gets up and he's tears streaming down his face and says, oh, that I should live to hear such an offer from you.
And this is where the books provide insight during some of the sex scenes of what they're really thinking about when they're having sex. And I can guarantee you, Lord John, it's all about Jamie. 100% Jamie. And there will be something that happens in the future that I can't wait to see how the show does.
Oh,
yeah, Karen knows.
I know what you're talking about.
You do too? You've read that far?
I haven't read the books beyond book 1, but I've read what happens in the next book in 6. So I think that's what you're referring to.
I'll let that be a surprise for Kylie and for Anna Laura. And yes, if you read the books that are specifically Lord John, there is no doubt where he swings. But you're right. He and his wife, I believe, genuinely love each other, but it's not sexual.
Yeah.
It's what they had to do. And she probably had her flings on the side. And he's like, okay, I have my flings on my side. Hey, keep it under,
Be discreet.
I can't blame him for being all into Jamie. I mean, really, you just can't blame the guy.
Nope.
And him taking on Willie, I think, genuinely, it's his and Jamie's love child. I mean, he genuinely knows who the real father is. And it's a chance of him to have a piece of Jamie that Jamie can't acknowledge yet.
Another moment in the woods between her mother and Jamie where you just know that she knows that he's the father as well. It's
everybody in that family knows.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought that exchange between the two of them was quite sweet, where she's like, okay, I'm going to give you an out, and understands why he doesn't take it, but isn't like, okay, now you're here for life. Where she goes, well, the offer's on the table.
And that's part of the reason why he has to go to the colonies, is because they look too much alike and people are starting to catch on. And that's where the red-headed bastard comes in. That's the whole line of why you hear that line is the red-headed bastard. Well, that's because the Scots were beautiful-looking people, better than the English.
Sorry to all of our English listeners. We're not trying to get into war amongst the constituent nations of the United Kingdom, okay?
No revolutions? No rebellions?
I mean, not right now. I was going to say, I agree with Samantha, your take on that conversation between the mother of the family and Jamie. I mean, I think it was a dual purpose. I think that was the subtext. When he intervenes when the Duke, or whatever he is, Earl, I forget, realizes that the child is not his. I think that all comes out, and I think she truly is thankful that he stands up for the family in that moment. So that conversation serves two purposes. But I do think it's very nice that she gives him an out and doesn't make it an ultimatum. You can go whenever you want. We'll bless your departure and pay you money, and you can do what you want to do, and basically gives him the dignity of the decision as opposed to indentured servitude or cast you off to the wolves, as it were. So I agree. I think it's a dual purpose conversation, though. But he does leave, and then the next thing we know, so I do want to say that the one thing that I felt was I get why they just kind of made it happen and they rushed it. But 1 minute Claire is tearfully crying in the taxi cab, and the next minute she's in 1750 whatever, and I was just like, that seems really like you found Edinburgh and you found Jamie like super quick. And considering the fact that Outlander just loves to separate these two and smush them back together, I felt like that reunion, even though it was breathtaking with her upstairs and he's downstairs and it's me, Jamie, it's me, all very beautiful, but a little cheaply earned because they just rushed right over there to Edinburgh. That's how I felt.
Well, drawn out to me because the one episode ends with her coming in and saying it's me and him collapsing, and then the next episode they walk it back and show you his perspective of that day before she gets there. And it's one of those like frustrating delay moments that this show does so well that it's like, no, we were like, they were together and now they're not together again.
It's like 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I didn't mind that. I was just like, how did you get from Craignadoon, which is up in Inverness, okay, all the way down to Edinburgh, and you found him so quickly? That, to me, felt like super book-to-TV cheap.
Fast travel.
The English brought better roads. There you go.
He was a printer in Edinburgh because of the pamphlet that Roger had found.
Oh, no, I know that's how she found him. I'm just saying the journey was super
it's
fast.
a little longer in the book, but not by much.
Okay.
Basically, she gets all ready. She flies to Inverness. She walks up to the circle. She transports back in time, and then she catches a coach to Edinburgh. So
and has no misadventure along the way. Wow, that was just a real easy trip back in time.
So unusual because in the books, sometimes they go on and on with the traveling on the roads, and it's like, can we just get there already? Sheesh.
That was the first third of the first season. She dropped in the middle of the field. She found Clan Mackenzie, and it took 3 episodes to get to the castle.
Remember, some of us watched this week to week for the first time. We couldn't.
I know.
It's a lot more of a sacrifice then.
I may be in the minority, but I actually liked it. I like that because they were apart for the first few episodes of the season. I like that once we saw Claire, like she's leaving Boston. You know, I love that we saw her in the taxi and then the door opens, but it's her 1780s foot or whatever, 1760s, I think.
Late 1750s.
Thank you.
From like a filmmaker perspective, it's like
1765 to be accurate.
Thank you. So it's her 1765 adorned foot that steps out of the carriage, and I was happy with it. I didn't need to see her traveling because we already knew what was going to happen. I felt that would have been more filler, and I wanted them to get back together. They'd kept me on the fence of when are we going to see them back together for the first few episodes. I was ready. And I think that just having it just at that final moment of that episode was perfect. And then exploring it more the following with him fainting and all that was hysterical, by the way.
I loved the scenes.
I loved it. But yeah, the lack of travel for Claire did not bother me one bit.
And yet they separated them again on the boats. But we'll get there for a second.
that was irritating that time. I am not about the boats.
But we'll get there first because, she does find him and all of this stuff. Of course, he is a printer, and while he's printing lovely poetry and quoting Lord Byron or whoever she's quoting, he's also printing sedition pamphlets. Pro-Scotland sedition pamphlets. And
duh.
He's also he's living in a brothel, and he's also sheltering young Ian, who's run away from home, not telling his parents, and then he's lying to Uncle, his brother-in-law Ian, when he comes along, saying, "Where's my son?" Well, I haven't seen him, but that's
liar, liar, pants on fire.
Somewhat literally, because the print shop burns down.
Probably
You got Fergus. I mean, Fergus is still around.
That's true.
Yes, Fergus, my man.
And guess who he ends up with?
Yay.
Oh yes, we forgot about the part that Jamie, in the intervening 20 years, finally consents to marry the ever-obsessed Larry, who is twice widowed. They mentioned that 3 times. She's twice widowed. And has 2 children who call him Daddy. They're stepchildren, but they're calling them daddy. Marcelly and what's the other?
Joan.
We don't care. Who?
Joan.
Joan? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two different dads, I think.
Two different dads.
Marcelly is husband 1, Joan is husband 2.
I think you're right.
He's got a lot of baggage.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
and it was apparently a very loveless marriage because he really wanted no part of it.
I think he meant that they've never lived together.
No.
Or that they only did for a very short time. But, like, Marcelly talks about that, though, like, watching him with her mother and, like, how it ended up being really cold. Even on Larry's part, it wasn't so much just that Jamie didn't really want to be there. It kind of also seems that Leary, when she did actually have him, it wasn't everything that she thought it would be.
Oh, yeah. She was into, like, the fantasy of how hunky he is and how he was going to love her so much, like he did with Claire. And
standard case of you always want what you can't have.
Yep.
Until you have it.
Grass is always greener.
Mm-hmm.
But
I never liked Leary. I mean, she was not a likable character. She did everything in her power to destroy, and then when she got it, he's like, I will in name only, I'll take care of the kids, but go packing.
Marcelly at first, I know because she's calling Claire a whore and all that, it's like you don't like her. But
You gotta say it right, it's a hooer.
Good job.
But then she grows on me because the way that her and now older actor Fergus interact with each other is just so sweet.
I agree. They're an adorable couple, and I love Marcelly's spunk. Lauren Lyle, the actress who plays her, is really funny as well. Her Instagram is really fun to follow. But I love their chemistry, and I love their spunk together, and her relationship with Claire, too, as it grows over the season. You start off, they're very adversarial. To Marcelly, Claire is the woman who's supplanting the place of her mother, who's come to take her father figure away. But then by the end of the season, Claire is helping her get ready for her wedding, and they're bonding and connecting. And I thought that was really cool.
It just shows what being raised by Leary, but then when she actually sees a real mother figure, there's that transformation, and I think the show did it very well.
I also love the actor playing Fergus.
Uh,
What a wonderful job to not only channel the younger actor, but also to bring a little bit of that innocence back in. Even though his innocence has been robbed, he still got that innocence undercurrent, and his relationship with Claire and Jamie is even more satisfying now than it was when he was a kid, because he's really come to see them as his parents too.
Well, just like at the wedding when the minister asks for his last name and he kind of stalls. He's like, and Jamie steps in. He's like, Fraser. I'm like, oh, tears.
his face, the little look he gives Jamie, that part gets me every time.
Every time. It was just a beautiful moment between the two of them as, adoptive father and son, but oh man, yeah.
And he always has such a twinkle in his eye.
He does. His eyes are beautiful. That bright blue.
He does.
Oh, yeah.
Fergus is just a good being.
He is. He really is.
And he's all part of the sedition, too. He's just as much in the whole, still the little spy.
And
we love a seditious
smuggler.
being.
They're smuggling the creme de menthe.
And the whiskey, don't forget the whiskey.
I know, but it's so funny that they're smuggling the creme de menthe and nobody wants it.
It's evidently very good. Yeah, it's very good for disposing of dead bodies, evidently.
It's probably almost like pure formaldehyde because it's creme de menthe. I mean, it's fine. Creme de menthe is delightful. You have to mix it properly. But maybe in 1765, you'd stick with the whiskey. That's what the Scottish do.
Yeah.
I just thought that was very funny and delightful. But yes, she finds Jamie. There's fainting and pantsing and also a lot of
as you do.
As you do. And there's a lot of discussion of the children. One of my favorite moments was when she talked about Brianna and he confessed about Willie, and they were both secretly disappointed, but yet understanding, and just realized, you know, he couldn't do much about Brianna. He did send her through the stones. She couldn't do much about Billy. It's 20 years removed. She expected him to have a life. I like what I think this show does, and a lot of the critics talked about this. They rate this season higher even than the first two, is the fact that they've taken a basic romantic fantasy premise and they've added a level of maturity to it to mine, which I'm sure is seated by the books, but to mine sort of the depths of the characters that you might not otherwise have seen in a tale like this. And I think that's especially true when they're having the talk in the print shop and kind of catching up with each other, and even as they're pulling back and forth and fighting with each other and then reminding each other how things were when they were together before and how things are different now. Those are the moments that I really find winning in this season probably the most.
And what she brought back to Jamie, the pictures.
The pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Brianna in a bikini.
Yeah, the bikini.
I love that. His reaction to Brianna in a bikini is my mother seeing me in a bikini. She's like, "You've hardly any clothes on." Like, he reminds me of my Christian mother.
Well, you know, people wore more clothes in 1760, but
a lot more clothes.
And one of my favorite scenes in the book was Jamie getting the shots in the butt. And the whining. And the whining, and oh my God, I'm going to die because you're shooting. And the show didn't do a whole lot with that, but it's a key thing. He can't get smallpox now. He has all his shots. And that scene always cracks me up in the book.
It was funny in the show, though, because even though he kind of complained and did a little groaning, he's making jokes the whole time. So I love that they're able to use Sam Heughan's comedic timing in that moment. It plays well.
Right.
Sam Heughan is underrated as a comedic actor. Like, he brings a lot of humor and lightheartedness to Jamie, and in a way that doesn't feel forced and balances well with the dramatic side. Like, both him and Katrina have some pretty good comedic topics as well.
Together.
How they make him so leery of the needles and kind of scared. It's like, here's this big tough guy that goes into battle, had all these wounds, and it's like, he can't handle a shot in the butt.
We all have our weaknesses.
Blood, I will tell you, the ones that faint the most are the big tough guys. Nothing like having a 200-pound tough guy slide out of a chair on you. They're always the ones who faint.
Love that.
What you're saying is, this is true to life portrayal.
It's not abnormal.
Fair enough.
Pretty true to form.
Awesome. Well, because of the whole sedition piece, so, you know, they're in league with this smuggler guy who, you know, he's basically skimming off the top. And they run afoul of him, and they send this glass-eyed dude, I don't know his name, I forgot, this glass-eyed dude to basically call him out and start, you know, roughhousing them. And he finds young Ian, young Ian actually finds him because he was about to give it up to a pretty barmaid. And at Fergus's encouragement.
Yep.
And then gets into a fight, tries to defend the print shop, gets into a fight, which then leads to the reveal of the secret wall and all the sedition pamphlets hidden within, but they knock over a candle, and being a print shop, surprisingly, it goes all up into flames. Yep, exactly. And because of that, they're kind of left with no other choice but to get out of Edinburgh because this guy is tracking them down. They have nowhere to go, so they go back to Lallybrook. And there's a reunion with Jenny and Ian. What do we think about that?
Awkward.
Just a little.
Yeah. Poor Jenny, though. Like, and Claire and Jamie have the conversation where Claire's like, well, maybe we should let her in on the secret, you know, that I traveled in time and that's where I was. And maybe it's like, oh, like, we wouldn't be able to explain to her, like, we wouldn't be able to answer all the questions that she would have. And I'm like, you know, on one hand, I get it, but that's like a very strange thing to say. And also, we don't want to spread that information around too much. But I'm like, they're family. It's Jenny. I wish they would have clued her in.
Especially after telling Murtaugh, I felt that maybe slightly sexist on his part, number one. And number two, Jenny keeps saying, look, she literally keeps saying to both of them, I know Claire is hiding something. There's the whole scene where Claire tells her most of the truth, and she's like, I see truth in your eyes, but there's still something you're holding back from me. And I just want her to be like, just tell Jenny. She's your sister-in-law.
Just say it. I feel like out of anyone in that family, like, Jenny can handle that information.
Right.
I feel like Jenny would be the one to be like, okay, cool. And then just, like, move on with her life. She'd be like, I don't actually feel like Jamie's saying, oh, she would have all these questions. We would never be able to answer all of her questions. I don't necessarily think that would be the case. I feel like Jenny would probably want to ask some, like, clarifying questions just to make sure she's got a handle on the situation. But I think that she could deal with that knowledge, and I don't think that she would, like, spread it around more or, like, treat Claire badly because of it. I mean, they all already think that she's a white lady.
It's one of the hard parts. Because in the book, Claire does sort of explain why she could not contact them. She does clue them in. She does talk to Jenny. They go off after they've been at each other for a week, and she finally caves and she tells Jenny that she couldn't contact him because she wasn't in this time. She does sort of hint that she time traveled. And Jenny's like, oh, well, I figured it had to be something like that, because Jenny in the book has the sight. So, you remember she says when Jamie was marrying Leary, she saw Claire between them.
Yeah.
Little bits through the book, she's portrayed as seeing things that, portends of the future, etc. So Jenny does accept that explanation much better, and I don't know why they didn't let that flow into the series. I think it would have played better, but she does let her know in the book that she is not actually from that time. She explains, you remember when I told you about the potatoes? The reason I know that is I'm from the future, and I couldn't contact you because Jamie made me go back at the Battle of Culloden. I haven't been in this timeline. So Jenny kind of looks at her and goes, well, okay.
Which is exactly the reaction that I would have assumed that she would have, only having seen the show and seeing what they did for the show. And now knowing that that's what they did for the book, I'm kind of more mad about it.
And also that would have clarified, because that part that she describes about Jamie and Larry's wedding, she explains it on the show, and I thought, well, that seems really out of place. Like, why, what is that supposed to mean? And if they'd have tied those two pieces together, I would have felt like, oh.
Yeah, because I feel like in the show, they haven't really hinted at Jenny having any sort of sight or supernatural abilities.
Especially
so
since
to throw that in the show, like that one thing, feels a little off.
Especially since they focus on that other sibling couple, the one who, with the sister who everybody thinks is touched, but she is having portents. So I'm like, why are we...
yes, Maggie.
Yeah. So why are we over here with her? Now you're telling me this. This would have been like the perfect setup for this other character.
It's almost
like... give Jenny powers 2020.
It's almost like they knew that, like, from a show perspective, like, okay, we're about to leave Scotland. We don't have time for this. We got to get to the...
The funny thing is even in the book, it doesn't take that much time. It's 1, maybe 2 pages of conversation. She just basically caves, says, this is why I couldn't communicate with you guys, because I wasn't here. And she explains what happened, and then she makes Jenny swear, you can't tell anyone but Ian the old elder. And they never do. It's just those two know, but nobody else does.
Yeah, I'm mad about it too now.
Yeah, I feel like even with what we did get with the show, with Jenny not necessarily having any sort of abilities, I feel like if they just would have kind of continued the theme that we do get in the show between Claire and Jenny, just make it like a minute longer and have Claire tell Jenny, I feel like we would have still ended up with the same result. Even if they still kept the decision to not give Jenny the sight in the show, I think she still would have had the same reaction that it sounds like she had in the book in that scene if they would have only just added that little bit on.
And it would have deepened their relationship in a way that probably would feel better, because I imagine they're going to reunite with them again at some point down the line here. It's probably going to be awkward again, because while you shrug, I'm predicting it. Everybody can say what they want, but come on, they're going to leave Jamaica. They're already on the boat. Okay? Stupid boat. I know they're in America right now. That's where the season ends. There's 2 more seasons I haven't watched. I'm just doing the math. Okay?
Keep things neutral for you. Like, I don't know anything.
I know that I'm the...
Let's talk about Jamaica.
Okay, so then, they decide they're going to pay Larry off. Young Ian is the swimmer. This is the same island where Jamie had investigated the possible white lady before. I think I know who that white lady was. It certainly wasn't Claire, but we found this treasure again. They want young Ian to go get it because he's a better swimmer. There's a lot of currents around this isle, Silky Isle it's called. And as he's going to get, actually, as he's bringing the chest away from the Mackenzie crypt or whatever that is, he's nailed by pirates, Portuguese pirates apparently, and they take him off toward the Caribbean. So Claire and Jamie, they're like, no, we must go after young Ian. They were originally going to go to France to pawn off all the jewels, but now they're going to chase young Ian, and they end up on this ship of a captain that Jamie knows, and they're kind of related, maybe through the cousin that sells the wine. I'm not sure.
It's through the cousin. The cousin Jared was like, oh, you can sail on this ship that's taking my wine to the Caribbean.
There you go.
And the captain's like, I'm cool with this, and that's what they do.
But then they get drawn in quarters in the middle of, I don't know, the Bermuda Triangle. What's going on? And all of a sudden there's this ship with typhoid fever, and they innocently ask for help. And Claire, the doctor, says, I can help. I know exactly what this is. She goes to the other ship, and it makes a break for it because it's all basically a setup to capture Jamie.
Of course it is.
I have problems with the boat part. Once they're in Jamaica, I'm okay. There's lots of delightful stuff going on in Jamaica. The boat part was like, this really...
It's frustrating.
And I don't know that I buy it. Number 2.
Well, in the books, he's puking the whole time, so he's bleh the entire time he's on the boats.
I do love seasick Jamie. It is funny to watch him.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Willoughby. Willoughby gives him like anti-nausal acupuncture.
Willoughby is fantastic.
Willoughby.
Eden Cho, I think is his real name. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But I love that Claire makes the effort to say his real name and to use that with him. I understand why, because, they say that his real Chinese name sounds like something vulgar and Gaelic. So I understand why they gave him a different name while they were still in Scotland, but especially once they go to other places. I really like that she does make the effort to learn his real name.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
I enjoy that character quite a lot. He might be one of my new favorite introductions in this season and everything. But I did have a problem with the whole journey to the Caribbean and, oh look, they're separated again.
Yeah.
That's when it's like, really?
Right?
Again.
I literally said that. Really? We're doing this again?
But doing it again already?
Right.
Like, already?
They got, 2, 3 episodes in before they got
Maybe 2.
separated again? Maybe 2? 2.5?
Yeah. So I feel that way.
I agree with you. All of the boat stuff was very, just felt tedious watching, and I felt better once they got on to real land again.
The episode titled Doldrums lived up to its name.
Yes.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I kind of skipped through those. I fast forwarded through a lot of it when I was rewatching because, yeah, like you said, the boat carts are little bit tedious. Like when I was like, oh wait, something important and plot related is happening. But yeah,
that's one of those where, although it is a significant portion of the book, I really think they did not need to spend 2.5 episodes on it in the series. They probably could have cut that down to an episode and a half.
And
easily.
spent more time with Claire telling Jenny she's a time traveler.
Yeah! Yeah!
A couple of minutes, that's all you needed.
Right.
Well, and I really thought we were going to get a fake out when the crazy reverend with the goat and she realizes it was a Chinaman and she's running and they're on the beach and packing away. I'm thinking to myself, they're probably not even on the same island. It's going to be a giant fake out. So then when it wasn't a fake out, I was like, what is happening right now? I felt confused.
There is a lot of... They're very lucky when they finally get to the islands. Not only the island that they land on, where the heretofore mentioned wedding happens, but also when they get to Jamaica, and also at the end of the series when they're thrown overboard the ship in the hurricane. So I don't know if that's a material plot point. I'm wondering if Claire's just so magical that happy, lucky things happen to her. But it's kind of interesting to me that, you know, we do spend some time following her, you know, sluggish walk through the island. She's afraid she's going to die. She passes out from dehydration and starvation, potentially, and then is found by... What?
With the bugs and the snake.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that snake!
The snake was not
I can't
cool.
do it.
I could feel it on my body as I was watching it.
Those were nice touches, because they literally gave me the creeps.
Oh, yeah. It was very well done. Like, the way they did it in the show is, like, it does its thing. But, yeah, that's another thing that I skip when I rewatch, because I'm like, I don't need to be freaked out right now. I don't need that in my life. I don't need that snake haunting my dreams tonight.
But
You know, really, it's about Ian's journey.
Yeah.
Ian and Fergus, more than Jamie and Claire. It's setting up future.
I see.
The next generation.
Outlander, the next generation.
Pretty much.
I don't know how I feel about that. Where I was going with is, you know, she finds Father Fogden, random preacher man who left his wife for a Caribbean beauty who then proceeded to pass away quickly, and now he talks to his own form of Wilson.
Yep.
But a coconut. But he saves her with the help of the grumpy passed away wife's mother, who just thinks, you know, Claire is a pox on their house. And then later on, when they are trying to follow young Ian and they finally reach Jamaica, this is the part that I am eager to talk about. We discover first, before they do, that the captor of young Ian and the patron of these pirate dudes is Gillis, witch woman. And she's bathing. She did not die. She escaped with the help of Dougal, apparently. The burning of the stake, all the while bathing in goat's blood.
As one does.
As one does.
Like, oh.
I found it very funny that she escapes being burned at the stake for being a witch when she's doing something that would be regarded as possibly crafty.
Pretty witchy. Pretty witchy.
But now we're in voodoo territory, so...
It's an offshoot, sure. It's related. It's interconnected.
We're all just dabbling in the occult, you know.
Apparently on this show, I still need more information, Anna. This is where I'm at. But she's there, and she's looking for... Apparently she's the one who compiled all those jewels and remembers that there are 3 sapphires in that box. And she needs those 3 sapphires to channel Maggie the prophet as she and her brother have made it to Jamaica to tell fortunes and make their living. But she actually does have the sight, and these sapphires are somehow a conduit, and the prophecy, which elaborately, so here's the other stroke of luck. Lord John Grey has been appointed governor of Jamaica. How lucky and fortunate. And then they come to a party where they find out this is true, and Gillis is like, let's tell fortunes, so that, because she finds that Lord John has one of the sapphires, because Jamie gave it to him way back in the day.
Friendship sapphire!
After investigating the white lady that wasn't true, which the white lady had to have been Gillis, right? We've made this connection. I love the circles in this season. I forgot to mention that in the beginning of the season, when, with Joe Abernathy, he was autopsying a found skeleton, and she somehow knew where that skeleton was from, and I had forgotten about that.
When that happens at the end of the season, you're like, oh yeah.
And they even give you a flashback in case you forgot what the skeleton was all about.
I know, I keep forgetting to pay attention.
When Joe Abernathy is like, somebody cut this woman's throat open with a knife, and Clara's like, oh, wow, that must have, been rough for her. And then you get to the end of the season, and you're like, oh, no.
Because there's a portal, apparently, in a pool of water in a cave in Jamaica, and she's convinced that human sacrifice is the way to activate these portals. I found it very fun that Claire said, well, that's not how it's ever worked for me.
Listen, I don't know what worked for you, but I did not need a human sacrifice.
Right. And the only reason Gillis is she's trying to assure Scotland's independence, but the prophecy says that the birth of a 200-year-old baby and the death of that baby will ensure the independence. And of course,
she's going to go forward. She's going to go forward in time, find Brianna, who she's already met before Gillis initially traveled through the stones. She meets Brianna in the 1960s. They're like, oh, hey, what's up? And then Gillis travels back. Timelines converge. And then Gillis realizes pretty soon after hearing that prophecy, when she meets up with Claire again, and Claire's like, yeah, I have a daughter. Here's pictures of her. And Gillis is like, oh my God, I met her. And she's like, wait, she would be a 200-year-old child. I'm going to go forward in time and kill my friend's baby. Friendship.
So what did we
Gillis is a very good friend.
Well, we have to put the button on this before I say what do you think. So Claire and Jamie figure out that this is happening, all amidst this voodoo ritual that's happening in the middle of the woods by the cave, and they run in to stop her. And in so doing, because she's ready to throw down, and her chief manservant's got a knife to Jamie's throat, they're going after it. And Claire's like, F this, and slashes at Gillis's neck. Doesn't quite make a clean cut of it. And all of a sudden they flash back to that skeleton. And I'm like, holy crap! Which may have been one of my favorite parts of the whole show to date, I have to say. So what did we think? Yeah, what did we think about all of this? How much jam-packedness can one season possibly have?
Well, they did what they've done the other two seasons, where it starts getting near the end, and it's like, okay, we gotta put a lot of story in here, so it goes very fast. And I like when stories go very fast with lots of content. So I liked once they got, because there was all this setup, and I liked all of that really short payoff. The only thing I didn't like about that portion of the season was how short we got to see Willoughby, because he falls in love
with Maggie.
And I'm so happy for them, but I love how it's just like, okay, we're gonna stay here and be happy. Bye. And it's like, oh, but I liked you.
True.
But they didn't die, at least.
Also true.
Yeah, at least they're not dead.
Silver lining. And I do like that it opens up to, it's not just about Craig Nadoon. There's all these other,
I know. Now I'm wondering, where else are there portals? Is there one in America?
Maybe. You're going to have to keep watching.
Is it in Salem, Massachusetts, by any chance?
It would seem like a likely place. I mean, you're about a little less than 100 years post-witch trial.
And she was in Boston when she went back to the place. And I just watch a lot of this kind of TV. So I'm like, 1 + 1 = 2.
You figured out how she travels yet?
No, that's not in the 1 + 1 = 2. I'm still confused. She hears humming. She made very clear she said that twice now, and I've caught it, where I hear the hum. And she said that in Jamaica. I hear it. I hear the humming. Do you hear that? She says to Jamie. He's like, I don't know. I don't hear anything.
How it was drawing her in. And it's like, no, stop.
And she does say to Gellis, when she says, human sacrifice is not the way it works for me. She says, I think it has something to do with who's drawing you back from the other side. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't fill in the blanks enough for me. I need more.
The master's math class.
There's an X in here I cannot solve, Samantha.
It's more laid out in the books.
And you'll get some more next season, too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't dropped that storyline.
Good.
Next season.
I'd get mad if they did. I'd be like...
You'll get more of it next season.
Okay.
For sure.
It does seem, unlike the Losts of the world, where they just keep the story in, there actually is some resolution as we go along. Because I also really dig, this kind of storyline with the metaphysics and kind of bananas.
That's Samantha's trademark word, bananas!
But then if it's never explained, or at least not enough nuggets that you can kind of piece it together yourself, it's very frustrating, and then I check out. Uh-huh. So you keep giving us enough to keep us going.
They do drop some nuggets for us, with the reintroduction of Jillian / Galis at the end of season 2, and then throughout season 3, her whole notebook and her hypotheses and stuff like that. The show doesn't seem to be about them figuring that out. It seems to be more about them living their lives once they get there. And let's be honest, they have a lot on their plate. They're dealing with quite a bit, and then they're just kind of gleaning whatever information about the time travel as they go along.
Which is fine, but this person needs the thing about the time travel. They don't, I get it. They have stuff going on, typhoid fever. They do make it back to the ship, but I did mention a hurricane, which they were very deliberate about showing us it was a hurricane.
It was a cool CGI shot.
It was a cool CGI shot.
And that was my favorite set of boat time. It was short, some big stuff happened.
And is it a euphemism for what they were doing on the boat? Boat time?
Where I was going with it, but it makes sense.
And I had a sense that the hurricane was over the Bermuda Triangle, because wouldn't that be between Jamaica and the colony of Georgia where they ultimately land? Shipwrecked and waterlogged and sandy-faced.
I liked the amount of sand they put in the hair. That looked legit.
Good hair to sand ratio.
Very accurate.
Well, that's good.
Just think how it shakes in a corset.
Lori not only agrees, she took it one step further.
Been there, done that, just saying. Wow. Not pleasant.
Sounds like a story, maybe for
too much.
A different time.
Do period reenactment.
I know you do. I think it was the sand in the corset was the other piece.
You were talking about legit sand.
# legit sand. That could be the name of a band.
That is a good band name.
I'm just saying. So that's where the season ends up. They're thinking they're sailing back to Scotland, that it's going to be all bells and whistles. They'll return young Ian. Everything will be great. They'll live their life together. Hurricane comes through. They manage to survive being tossed overboard. It seems like she's quite waterlogged for a long time, but she miraculously comes back to life on the beach. I wonder why. And then, yes, they're discovered and informed by some settlers there that they've reached the colony of Georgia. Of all the colonies, they've reached the colony of Georgia, which was very heavy in the slave trade as well, which they introduced in Jamaica, so I imagine that's going to come back too. That's season 3.
The funniest part of that moment on the beach where they're like, oh, we're alive, and we're just like longingly looking into each other's eyes, and the family is awkwardly standing there, out of them being like, okay, we're gonna walk away now.
I know, like that final bit where like they're having their moment and this family, like this couple and their kid is just like, cool, okay, yeah. So we're gonna do this huge crane shot out. Like, all right,
plus a drone flyover.
You guys have your moment.
Yeah.
We get it. You just arrived at shipwreck. Been through some stuff. It's still awkward though.
They follow up the crane shot with a drone flyover where you can see this family go.
I do love though, and I think it was when the season originally came out and I watched it, and an article or a tweet or something pointed out that in the middle of the season, when young Ian is kidnapped, there's that drone shot of them on the coast pulling away from Scotland, and then here at the end of the season we have a drone shot going inland towards America. That's kind of symbolic of the new direction that the show is going in. I thought that was really cool.
Interesting. So let's do some wrapping up questions to kind of solidify and summarize your overall response to season 3 in our catch-up series. Each season, well, at least starting last season, I've asked you to compare and contrast the seasons that we've watched so far. Where would you rank the 3rd season amongst the first 3? And why? Because this is a podcast.
I think I'd probably rank the 3rd season as my 3rd. I would probably go in order. The 1st season is still my favorite at this point. Then the 2nd season, then the 3rd season. Just because it felt a little disjointed with the 3 major sections where it's their life apart and reconnecting is kind of part 1. The boat traveling to find Ian is 2, and then the time in Jamaica to the end of the season is part 3, and it just didn't have that same through line that the other 2 seasons had, but again, it's not down by much. They're all very, very close.
I agree that I'd rank it 3rd, but I would rejigger, so my favorite would be 2, then 1, then 3, for a lot of the same reasons you mentioned.
I think if I have to rank the entire series together, it would probably go 1, then 2, then 3 for me. I feel a little more at peace with it in my own soul if I kind of look at seasons 1 and 2, or I guess seasons 2.5 until the part where they're still in Scotland as kind of their own thing. And then when we switch gears and go to a new hemisphere, viewing that as its own thing, feel a little more at peace with it. Looking at it as two separate parts of a whole. That I like certain things overall. There are certain things I like in one half more than the other, but some of it is just, you know what? The first half of the series has this and it's great. Second half of the series has this and it's great. And that's just great. That's it.
I think I would also rate them as season 2, season 1, season 3. Even though 3 is my favorite book, Voyager is my favorite book, I feel like the story arc in 2 is the most complete story arc. Season 1 is great in that it sets all the background and you get to meet all the characters, or a lot of them. Season 3 I like, but by the end of it, I begin to feel a little like it's the perils of Pauline. It's just, how much more can we do to this couple in one season? It just begins to feel a little contrived. And I know it's all in the book. It's all in the book. But to try and capture a 1,200-page book and cram it into a 13-episode season was a bit of a superhuman effort. And the season feels a bit frenetic for that reason, to me.
I'm on my favorites 2, 1, and then 3. I like pieces of this season 3, but it didn't flow like the other 2 seasons. However, the one bright shining star is Bear McCreary. The music, how the music shifts for each scenario, and you get a taste of those different styles of music in 3 different locations.
I think I'm also at 213. I like the description of frenetic for season 3. That's exactly how I felt. So I know we kind of joked a little bit about how abruptly Claire gets from Boston to Scotland, and we were okay with that, but then there are these other things that just go on for forever. To me, that's a pacing problem, and there might have been a lot of material to adapt in this 3rd book to season transition, and I'm going to trust Karen and Lori on that subject since they've read that far. But when you do that, and Game of Thrones has the same kind of similar issue when it's taking hundreds and hundreds of pages of rich material with a world that's been laid out into many, many different onion layers of things, and they have to find a way to condense it into 10 to 13 hours of TV. I mean, that's part of the reason why we love TV, but at the same time, you can also see where people kind of get mired in some things and maybe should spend more time on other things. And to me, that felt very true in season 3. I felt like the time in Scotland was abrupt. They could have stretched that out a little bit more. The time aboard the boats felt like forever, even if it was only a couple of episodes. And there was a lot going on in this season that maybe not could have been split out a little bit better. They probably could have made this like a season and a half's worth of stuff. I don't know what happens. All I know is that, Samantha, you talked about the ramp up where everything feels like a lot of content near the end of the season. True, but there was a lot of content at the beginning of the season this time, and I just felt like there was some pacing problems in it, where there were parts that were very fast, almost too fast, and there were parts that were too slow that could have been hurried up. And that problem wasn't as evident in the first 2 seasons.
Well, I think as we get deeper into the series, I have more trouble distinguishing one season from the next, because so much of the season finale from season 2 was setting up for those first set of episodes in the 40s, 50s, 60s, that in my mind I almost encapsulate those as one unit, like her time in the future or the present, depending on your perspective, I guess. And then, so it's almost like, for me, when I think back on season 3, it's like it doesn't even begin until she goes back.
Plus, we're losing a lot of enigmatic characters, like Blackjack's gone. Galis is, you know, she wasn't in a lot of season 2, but she's clearly a very charismatic character that makes a big impact in the short time that she's there. So I hope there's interesting characters going forward, but I have a feeling that they're probably not going to be as impactful as some of the ones we've met so far. Maybe I'm wrong.
Especially the loss of like Murtaugh and Rupert, and I can't.
Isn't Murtaugh? Didn't he get shipped to America though?
Murtaugh does. It's Angus who died. Dougal died. Yeah.
Rupert gets executed in the season premiere.
But I mean, he was in prison. He just wasn't around. So you have all of this Scottish influence that's gone.
I'm hoping they find Murtaugh again. I'm getting smiles from people. But they definitely made mention of the fact that the prisoners got let out of Ardmere and were being shipped to the colonies. And I did not lose sight of that little throwaway statement.
I didn't like that he wasn't able to say goodbye. You know, they kind of have the longing look at the prison. It's just sad. That's all part of that, like, really sad set of episodes where everyone's having a rough go.
Samantha's like, the first third of this season is depressing, y'all.
And the second season is just bumps.
The second part of the season is bumps. Bumps. It does feel like that. I'm sorry.
At least they're beautiful boats.
Yeah.
They're the tall ships.
Didn't they borrow them from Black Sails?
They did.
I feel like I remember hearing that. Because I also love Black Sails.
It was a great show.
It's a good show. The first time I watched this season with the boats, I was like, I mean, to the untrained eye, a boat is a boat. But I was like, oh, this feels familiar somehow. And like the way they shot on the boats felt familiar. And when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
The Artemis was really
same
cool.
music too. Bear McCree.
Yeah, Bear
did the
McCree, which the music for Black Sails is also dope.
I know, right?
That hurdy-gurdy, though.
Hashtag that hurdy-gurdy, though.
Hashtag
We're just
that hurdy-gurdy,
creating them
that
all
we
the place.
stand hurdy-gurdies in this house, okay?
The Artemis was a beautiful, beautiful ship. That one had particularly a lot of the detailing in the colored panels and, you know, the lady on the bow and everything else. So I thought that was...
Bearing her breath so Claire and Marcelly don't have to. How considerate.
Apparently, that's
So
what,
nice of her.
that's what it's for. As if that's real, I did not know that. So, that's good. Okay. So was there which point in this season gave you the most chills?
Good chills or bad chills?
Any chills?
Snake would be bad chill. For sure.
It just wants to cuddle.
Listen, I love good snuggle, but like with my cat, not with an animal that has the potential to, you know, kill me.
I give you a hug.
I'll be quite.
My big chill moment, I love I knew what was going to happen when I saw it at the beginning, but I love the Joe Abernathy bringing this skeleton from Jamaica, and Lady Jane, tell me your take on it, and she says, because I knew and I love seeing it, but the tie-in at the end is great. That's a great aha moment.
That
tie-in at the end would be my good chill, I guess. So good chill would be the Galus reveal, Galus skeleton reveal, and then bad chill would be that friggin' thing. I get it. Snake has done nothing to me, but sorry.
I guess I love every interaction that she has with Joe. Like when she's like, okay, you know, like, am I still pretty? Like, what do you think? And he's like, you are a sex broad. You know? Like, you could just see that, like, just how much they're best friends and the conversations you can have with people that you're so comfortable with.
Yeah, I think for me, my good chill moment was discovering that there are more places like Craignadoon scattered throughout the world. So that was a cool reveal for me for not being a book reader. And then a bad chill was the skinned goat head. What was her name? Abigail, the goat.
Arabella?
It's Arabella.
Thank you. I'm like,
Arabella the goat.
Thank you. Yep, Arabella the goat. Yeah, seeing the skinned head and then he's pouring the cockroaches or whatever on it. That's a bad chill. I have this really weird fear of dead things. And so seeing the head and all that. Oh,
That's a weird fear.
That's valid.
Bad chill. Bad chill is the goat head.
As I was rewatching this season to refresh for our conversation, I was like literally eating lunch when that came on. And I was like, oh no.
Bad timing.
That's very bad timing.
I absolutely hated all of the 50s with the exception of Joe Abernathy. I was happy when Frank finally died, and I'm like, finally we can get on with it. Because that time just drove me bonkers. The meeting, when they finally meet in Scotland, is the good. You expect him to run to her. Nope, he just falls on the ground. And there he is.
And spills his ale on himself and thinks that he peed himself.
Yeah.
Ale pot.
I would say the Galus reveal was mine. I loved Claire and Jamie's breathless reunion in the print shop. I didn't get chills from it, though. I got legitimate chills. Like, I literally went, oh, when she did that to Galus, and then they casually flashed back to that skeleton scene. And to me, now my mind is turning that obviously that has some sort of import going forward, too, just because I think it ties into whatever mystical energy is flowing around Claire right now, which I do not know the X that solves the equation, but we will figure it out, I'm sure.
I love the smirk Karen's giving you.
I know!
It's
Karen
that
and her
knowing smirk.
You're going to like season 4.
I'm I'm excited. What I can honestly say, as I'm the one most behind, is that with each season finale, I'm not lost for wanting to keep going. Like, I have to know what comes next, and even though Outlander for me is not necessarily a bingey show, like I can watch 5 episodes at once, I do feel the pull to like, okay, I gotta watch the next Outlander right now. Like, I think it's time for me to go home and watch Outlander right now, that kind of a business. So that's happening. To that end, of course, I have to ask this magical question. Upon the end of season 3, remember, responsibility to our listeners, would you still recommend Outlander?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and why aren't they getting nominations?
This happens to
It
be
is a crowded field.
There's
a lot of good TV out there.
This happens to be recorded the night after the Emmy broadcast.
That's why I said something. But seriously, they should have gotten Emmy nominations from the beginning, and they are being snubbed.
Anyone else want to weigh in on their Emmy eligibility?
Katrina Balfe got nominated the second season, as did Tobias Menzies. But they were up against Game of Thrones. And I don't think they've been nominated since.
I believe Bear won something for his music. I think so. I want to say he did, but he did at least get nominated. But yes, they got snubbed because of Game of Thrones. And now it's other shows that have been on forever that are sweeping, and
yeah,
that's my opinion.
In Game of Thrones, it's no contest. I don't follow any of the Emmy stuff, so I can't really weigh in on this, but I'll take your word on it that they're not being nominated, and they should.
I think they should for cinematography and costuming. I mean,
yeah,
their costumes are period correct with some slight, but not glaring like a certain show that I always bitch about. But, there's more to it than they're obviously putting money into the show. They are obviously taking their time getting good cinematography, good music, good, albeit maybe not as well-known actors, but are up-and-coming, I believe, actors. I mean, Sam Heughan was one of the one of the choices for 007. That says something.
Well, this is
nominated a lot, but they've only ever won a BAFTA, and that was in 2016.
This is Star's flagship series, so to the point that they're putting money into it, I think this is what's giving Stars a name right now. Is this series?
Actually, I would say Black Sails did that.
Yeah, Black Sails was first, right?
Correct.
It was on the L first, yeah.
I think this one has broader appeal, though. I can tell you that more people have heard of Outlander than Black Sails.
That's for sure. I would definitely say that Black Sails is 100% more underrated than Outlander. It was made first, but Outlander is definitely what put Stars as an original content network on the map. I for sure did not know what Stars even was before Outlander was a thing. Now they're coming out with other original content that they've been able to do because of the success of Outlander. But yeah, I mean, to me, I'm really used to the shows that I love and watch and like not getting awards love. So I just kind of learned a long time ago not to really put stock in it. We all like what we like, and like I said, it's a really crowded field. There's a lot of good television out there. I would like to see this show getting some awards. There's also a lot of other shows. I wish we could Mean Girls it and just break off a piece of the Emmy and give one to everybody.
No, but with awards comes better. You get more money, you get more following. And I think it was billed at the beginning as all about sex and all about the sex part of it more than the story part of it, I guess is what I'm going for.
That's true, but I would also say the same could be said for Game of Thrones, especially Game of Thrones' early season. I mean, I remember when I first started watching Game of Thrones, I think I started Game of Thrones as the 5th season was airing, and someone at my albeit Christian college was like, wait, isn't that just softcore porn? And I was like, well, if it is, it has a really good storyline. And honestly, same for Outlander.
Until the end.
Until the end.
That's
Our
for our
rip.
Game of Thrones podcast, which we've already done.
I know.
I don't.
But at least up until the point that I had watched at the time of the conversation being referenced, Game of Thrones had a good plot, and I think the same could be said for Outlander. I remember when it was first coming out, I didn't watch it yet, but I remember hearing about there's graphic content and all stuff again at the time because Outlander, the first season aired in 2014, correct? So I was just graduating from my Christian high school, so I was not watching the show quite yet. But I remember it being talked about, there's this graphic content, there's a lot of sex scenes and stuff like that. But then a few years later, when I had what I call my summer of fandoms, and I decided to get into it, and I was like, yeah, there's definitely a lot of sex in this, but the storylines are really good too. And that's what I'm here for.
I don't know that I heard about the sex in Outlander. I mean, maybe it's presumed, but from my understanding of it, it was just a wildly romantic tale, which is a little bit different than Game of Thrones, which is dragons and inter-house violence all over the place.
War,
all
political
exactly.
machinations.
Exactly. So, and I think because Outlander was marketed to be kind of wildly romantic, downplayed the parts about Scottish independence and that kind of business, it appealed to a certain demographic, probably more, and I could make all kinds of comments about who the system is and who's in charge of nominating Emmys and things of that nature, and they're probably not the type of viewer that is watching Outlander on a regular basis. But it's nice to know that they were at least nominated at one point. Should they still be nominated? I don't know. Anna is right. It's a crowded field, so I don't know that I have a strong opinion. But I recognize that you have a fierce loyalty to it, Lori, and that you think it is excellent.
Well, I saw who won last night, and I've watched the show, and I'm very skewed.
Fair enough. Everybody would recommend the show still, so that's at least something. And of course, we still have 2 more seasons to catch up on in our Outlander series. But at this time, is there anything else you wish to say that we haven't covered regarding season 3 of Outlander? I hear nothing.
I think we got a lot in there. I think we covered pretty much everything we could cover.
I think you're right. We were very thorough. I feel very satiated by this conversation. And since it's so satisfying, what I'd have to do is thank Samantha, Kristen, Lori, Karen, and Anna Laura for joining me once again to talk about Outlander. Never fear, there's more Outlander to come, but we can't do that without rolling the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation Point was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kels Rezmer. Kels played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole shebang was engineered by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us, give us stars, provide comments, or review us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon are just a few of the places you can find us, but we're also on YouTube. We have our website, and we're now on Patreon at patreon.com/couchpotatoesunite. If you really love us, pledge your support by becoming one of our United Couch Potatoes as we grow our little sofa-populated corner of the world. Otherwise, feel free to tell us how we're doing, what we should add, subtract, keep, or toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions for shows we might consider, contact us at our website where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, our Facebook, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, our Patreon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time, and always have new episodes coming down the pipe. Just listen to our intros. If you miss old episodes or want to know in general what shows we cover, just search for us. Find us wherever you do searchable things on the internet. Don't forget that exclamation point, or contact us via our website, our email, our social media accounts, and our Patreon to stay up on all the new events and episodes by our humble little podcast, Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point. Until the next time, the first 3 seasons of Outlander are available to stream on Netflix, while seasons 4 and 5 are available through a subscription to Starz, either directly or via some kind of add-on to outlets like Amazon Prime. In the meantime, our Outlander panel will next reconvene, very shortly in fact, to talk season 4 and episode 4 of our 5-part catch-up series. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday